Like many people, I deal with a lot of text, whether that's email, social media posts, maybe website content, and so on. And I find myself often copying and pasting text, especially between desktop apps and my AI chat apps like Gemini or Claude. So I decided to build this app, which I call Rewire Text, that allows you to do text transforms on your desktop in any app. Let me briefly show it in action, and then I'll get into the part that I think is going to be most interesting to you all, and that's running it with local AI models, so nothing ever leaves your machine, and I'll also show how the whole app is built and shipped. So here's an example use case. Say I'm writing a launch post for Rewire Text on LinkedIn, and I brainstormed this with my AI, and it spit out this really cringy text that you see here. It's full of AI tells, right? It has M dashes everywhere. There's a bunch of it's not X, it's Y kind of phrases. A lot of exaggerations, like in a world of endless subscriptions, Rewire Text is different. The rule of three, right? You own it, you control it, you keep it. All of these things that AIs like to do. So one thing I can do here is select everything. Then I hit my global hotkey. By default, that's Control-Shift-, or Command-Shift-, on Mac. And it brings up this little command palette here. So now I search for my Humanize transform. Here it generates the preview down there. Okay, and then let's hit enter, and it replaces it in place. So let's take a quick look here. At least at first glance, it's much better, right? I just launched Rewire Text, a tool designed to improve how you work with text, blah, blah, blah. There's no M dashes. There's no, it's not X, it's Y. So this does read much more human. It is still AI generated. And honestly, it's better to just write it yourself. But that's just one example. Or maybe I decide that I want to write in my native tongue in German. So we search for translate, and I have translate to German here. Click on this, and a few seconds later, we should get the German result at the bottom. And now I hit enter, and there we go. That's one example, right? You can probably think of tons of other apps where you would use something like this, whether it's in your note-taking app like Obsidian, in your email client, or even in your IDE. So you just saw the command palette mode. There's also a full application window for Rewire Text. So let's take a quick look at that here. So here you basically have an input and an output window. I pasted in a newsletter post from my Gamma Vibe newsletter. So we can just quickly show some of these transforms. You can pin your favorite transforms here. So here we have case conversion. Those come in handy. And by the way, these transforms are not AI-based at all, right? They just run immediately on your computer, no AI necessary. So you can do uppercase, lowercase, a bunch of developer-oriented transforms, camel case, Pascal case, snake case, and so on. There's some formatting here, like trimming whitespace. Say we want to remove all the blank lines, right? That's one click, and it just does it. You can add line numbers, remove line numbers. You can sort lines. Probably not useful for a newsletter, but this is what that would look like. Reverse it. Some encoding, decoding, like base64, JSON string escape, URL encode, things like that. JSON formatting. You can convert between CSV and JSON and vice versa. There's some Markdown as well. So like I can strip the Markdown formatting, for example, or change heading levels. That's something I find myself using a lot. And then down here, we have all the AI transforms, various tone and style rewrites. So like I can make the text more casual, more formal, more concise. Let's try this one maybe. Actually, before I demo this, let me go here, because I mentioned I wanted to show local AI. So here are my settings. You can also toggle between dark mode and light mode, by the way. Here in my AI transforms right now, I'm using Google Gemini. Now let me use LM Studio. You can also use Ollama or llama.cpp, but here's LM Studio. Test my connection. It's already running. It says 2 models available. So I have the E4B model, which honestly is probably my favorite variant of the Gemma 4 models. It's very capable and fast. The 12B model is a bit more capable, but it's slower. So you can kind of experiment. But for most of the things I'm doing, including translations into all sorts of languages and so on, the E4B model is more than enough. So let's do that and go back here. So now when I click on this, it's going to be using my local model. So let's do make concise. And there we go. You'll notice it's actually just as fast as using Gemini over the API. Down here, you see the characters, right? It went from 6,041 characters to 4,492 characters. Let's try translation. So let's do German so I can actually assess the output. And again, it's super fast. And there's the German version. It's still streaming the result in here. You can kind of scroll through as it streams in. Another nice thing is I can actually use the output as input. So I can now click on this, which copies the German version over here. So I can effectively chain transforms. So now I can maybe convert this to bullet points. So I click on that, and now it should be turning this into a German list of bullet points. There we go. You can even run a custom instruction. So if there's anything specific you want to do, you could just type that in and it would transform that in place. All right, that's enough for the demo. I think you get the idea. So let me very briefly talk about the tech stack here. So I decided to build Rewire Text with Flutter. There's a couple reasons for that. Most importantly, I wanted to build this as a cross-platform app that I can launch on both Windows and Mac OS, because I actually go back and forth between both systems on a daily basis. And I want to have a consistent tool set between the two. So it had to be cross-platform. Now, I did briefly consider going full native. These days, that's more feasible than it used to be because, I could build a dedicated Windows version with Claude Code and then also a dedicated native macOS version using Swift. But I think it would be difficult to keep them in sync, deal with bug fixes on both platforms, and so on. And I'm just one person, so a cross-platform framework made a lot more sense here. I considered Electron and Tori 2 as well. They're both good frameworks. In the end, I landed on Flutter, and I'm actually really happy with my choice. Flutter for desktop has come very far, and it's a really pleasant developer experience, actually. And Claude Code does really well with it. It also has really nice support for monorepos. So if you haven't worked with one, basically a monorepo is a single repository that can serve as a container for a whole suite of applications and libraries. That was important to me as well, because I knew there were a couple of applications that I wanted to build, and they would all share a bunch of functionality, including support for local AI, for example. So I wanted to find a clean way to extract all of those shared bits into shared libraries or packages, as Flutter calls them, and then reuse them across all my apps, right? So if we take a quick peek here, here's my repo. I have an apps directory where I have my apps. So Rewire Text is the one that I'm working on right now. The next one I'm planning is going to be Rewire Image. So all centered around image transforms. Not going to look at the actual code in here. Happy to do a deep dive in a future video if that's interesting to folks. But that's the app. I'll talk about the theme showcase in a little bit. And then down here under packages, I have a bunch of shared packages. I have a core package that has a bunch of common functionality that all my apps share. Licensing, as you can imagine, is for handling license validation and registration. I use Cream as my merchant of record. So if you purchase the app, you go through Cream, you paste your license in the app, and then this basically validates that the license is valid. So that's all encapsulated in this package. Here's my theming. So all my apps can basically share the same theme, or at least the same approach to theming. And then here's updates. So that's the functionality for checking for new versions and downloading an update when there is one. There's probably going to be a bunch more shared packages in the future. This also gives me a nice way to have a shared docs directory. So for example, here I have some principles that all my apps share. This is important when I'm working with Cloud Code, so it can make sure that every app adheres to the same set of principles around naming and information architecture and things like that. I even have a doc here for my icon design system. I use Cloud Code to generate SVG-based app icons. Works really well. Things like that. And by having it organized this way, I can also easily run tests across my entire monorepo, make sure that I didn't inadvertently break something in one of the apps, and so on. So I really like the setup. Maybe briefly talk about my release pipeline. I actually had fun putting that together. So here I have build scripts for Mac and Windows. Now those only run on the respective environment. So right now I'm in front of my Windows computer, so I could run this Windows build script, and that creates a exe file, an installer. And then here's the release.sh. That's for creating an actual distributable installer. And what that basically does is when I call this, so I have a Markdown-based changelog file. As you see here, this has release notes for every version that I've released so far, just a few patch releases. This follows this so-called keep a changelog format. You can read about it here. And it depends on using semantic versioning, which assigns special meaning to like the major version, minor version, patch version, and so on. Anytime I build a new feature, I add a note here to unreleased. So this might be a feature that I added or something that I fixed. In fact, since I'm doing agentic engineering, I have an instruction in my claude.md. Let me see if I can find this. Here we go. I have a standing instruction for Claude to capture any changes in the changelog. So it automatically maintains this for me. So it'll put things here. And then when I'm ready to release a new version on Windows, I would need to open a git bash because it's a shell script. Then I would call tool.sh rewire-text as the app name. Again, this is the monorepo. So this stuff is all generic. I can use this to build the next app just as easily. And then I would specify the version. So I would say, let's say it's just a patch release. So I would call it 1.0.7. Now what this will do is it'll create a new entry in the changelog for that version. It'll move over everything that I wrote under unreleased. It'll also update the version in the pubspec.yaml. So that's the official version for the app. Then it'll commit both of those. It'll tag the release in Git and push that up to GitHub. And then everything else actually happens on GitHub. So let me pull that up real quick. So on GitHub, here's my repo. And then I can click on Actions. You can see all the past release flows in here. So let's click on the last one. It's kind of nice how it visualizes things here with these nodes. But basically, you can see that my release, there's some setup that happens at first. And then it basically parallelizes into a Windows build and a Mac OS build. So let's click on Build Windows, for example. So the script basically runs the Flutter build. Then it uses inno setup. That's the installer framework that I use that creates the actual Windows installer. Then there's a bunch of signing related steps. So in order to distribute a build and not have the operating system complain about it when you run it, you need to sign it. In my case, I'm using a cloud-based signing system that Microsoft provides under, I think it's called Azure Artifact Signing, I think is the new name for it. So it does that. And then when it's done, it pushes the installer to Cloudflare R2. So that's their cloud storage system. Yeah, that's basically it. The Mac version is pretty similar. There's also a similar signing step and notarization step that happens as well. And then when they're both done, this part is interesting. It publishes the metadata also to R2. So what it does is it turns the changelog Markdown file that I have into a JSON file. I can actually show you what that looks like. And then it also creates this latest.json file that's basically just some metadata around the latest version number and so on. And then it publishes both of those to R2. The part that I still need to wire up is actually to trigger a website rebuild. But the next time the website builds, it automatically pulls from R2. So if we look at the Rewire Text website, download for Windows, it automatically knows to download the 106 version. And then if we look at the changelog, this is automatically generated from that JSON version of the Markdown changelog. It sounds more complicated than it is. And honestly, Claude Code was really helpful in helping me figure this out and wire this all up. But here we have sort of a nice HTML version of that same changelog. I can show you the raw version on R2. I have my R2 bucket mapped to releases.sunsetmesasoftware.com. So here's the JSON version of the changelog. And then here is the latest.json. So that just has the version number, when it was released, links to the installers, changelog URL. And then this URL is actually used in my app. So when I pull up the app, here, let's open this quickly. So here's the app. And I click on check for updates. Right now it's going to say it's up to date. But if there was a newer version uploaded, it would actually mention that and make it easy to download the update. Now, most apps have this. I always took this kind of functionality for granted, but there is some wiring involved in actually making that possible. And I really like this setup that I landed on. And again, the thing I particularly like is that I only had to solve it once for this app. And then all my future desktop apps, they're just going to get all of this for free. I'm not really going to have to make any real changes there. So that's the release pipeline. Let me briefly show you the theme lab. That's another thing that I'm quite happy with. So I'm just using Flutter Run to start this. Now it's building the app. And here it is. So by default, it shows me the theme that I've configured. So I can basically scroll through it, see what the different colors look like. So Flutter has this system of primary, secondary, tertiary colors. I have some error colors here. And for each one, by the way, you have, so for example, for primary, you have the primary color, you have on primary, right? So that's the color that you would use to render something legibly on the primary color. There's a container variant of it and on primary container. It's actually a pretty nice system. So you don't have to hard code colors anywhere. You can just sort of have your theme. And then in your theme, you just refer to these labels. I have some semantic colors for warnings and success. I also have some categorical colors. I don't use them in Rewire Text. I have another app that uses these. So these are kind of more fixed. So you might use these for like certain labels in the app where you maybe hash some text to come up with a badge automatically, ideally with minimal conflicts. Typography, so I can see what my fonts look like. This was like from another app that I'm working on, kind of some real examples of how this renders. Anyway, I found this pretty helpful. And then when I click on Theme Lab, I can actually play with things in real time. So I can toggle light mode and dark mode or auto. So we have this. Then I can pick a different seed color for my theme. So this is all programmatic. It's all just based on a single seed and then a selection of the scheme variant. So let's say I pick this kind of pink here, make it even a bit more vibrant. Okay. And then I do the default, which is called tonal spot. So you kind of see this pinkish color here and so on. So that would be how this app looks with this. But then there's other variations. I can do like, monochrome. I guess it's mostly monochrome except for the ones that I've hard-coded. Can do like rainbow. So they're all just different variations that are more or less vibrant. Like vibrant is actually reasonably vibrant, as you might expect. Could do this like bluish version. And they all automatically have a light and a dark variation that like automatically looks very readable. So I really like this. Anyway, just thought I'd show this off. This is something that was helpful to me in dialing in my my own theme. That's all I wanted to show on the technical side. If you want to play with it, the link is in the description. Go ahead and download it. It's a 7-day free trial, fully functional. And then afterwards, there's a core set of transforms that keeps working. And it's a $29 single purchase to unlock it on up to 2 devices. So if you have a chance to try it, leave a comment. Let me know if you have any feedback, any feature requests or anything like that. Also, if there's anything here that you would like me to dive into a bit more than happy to in a future video. So thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if you can, and see you next time.